Thursday was a caffeine-fueled, anxiety-infused dash to sit for 4.5 hours. I could go at length about not being a fan of air travel, the lack of control over the machine or its 100 some odd passengers, combined with the security theater troupe you're forced to acknowledge before boarding, makes for a chunky, boiling broth that sends my nerves into full attention, every sense tuned to the slightest change in the cabin's atmosphere. I tried my best to shut the world out until we arrived in Seattle, making our descent between Mount Rainier and Glacier Peak, the clouds rolling beneath the vehicle like frothy waves on an endless ocean, our first trip as a representation of something beyond a fan or myself could officially begin. I spent Friday exploring Belltown, mostly mapping routes to and from my hotel room that would allow for minimizing distractions. Being stopped on the street bugs everyone, but I personally always have trouble with it. My brain fills with psychic hums of the living city and any new external information, like a man leaping at me from a street corner is liable to send me throwing money at them to get them to stop what they are doing, or stammering positive rejections because I do not understand what they are asking me for. Cities can be slightly overwhelming. Saturday morning brought the reason for this trip. PodCon 2017. I didn't take near enough video of my weekend at the convention center. At that point, I wasn't sure what I'd be bringing home, and the days were so packed with necessary shows, panels, and workshops that capturing everything, seeing it all, or absorbing every ounce of information would prove impossible. Almost immediately, doubt began to fill my head and tried to take up residence in my heart. Was this the right move? Do we belong here? Is podcasting and every foolish dream I brought to the Emerald Port something that belongs to 19 and 20-year-olds with the privilege of disposable income and opportunities I never was able to take? The bonus hours was started to forge a path for exposing the world to the unique perspectives of thought that one only finds in my backyard. But after talking and connecting with other independent creators that had their presentation game on point, with expensive cards and t-shirts, I began to wonder if maybe I'd run the ship aground and played myself. My mind flooding and sputtering with all of the most extreme didn't do's of the year. Until Sunday afternoon, when a great panel ended with a walking coincidence which collided with me and my stupid, opportunistic spirit. Everyone has a podcast, guys, and of the 3,000 in attendance in Seattle this weekend, a large handful are going to start one in the new year. And that puts us ahead of the game. And not one of those people can speak to the world in the same way we can. Joseph Fink of Night Vale came on stage at the start of the closing show and told us about a kid he'd talked to in Minneapolis on the last leg of his book tour. After weeks of being asked by 1,000 people, how do you start a podcast? One lone creative asked, I started a podcast. I don't know what I'm doing. What now? What now? That question that brought me on a flight from the opposite side of the country was, according to a professional, the mark. It's the ones that dive in and learn to swim on the way to the bottom, who learn to ride the waves. Travis McElroy came to the stage to tell a crowd of thousands that the next big podcast was in the crowd. And that he was damn sure that in the next year, one of us in attendance would be doing a live show from the main stage. Everyone around me erupted into cheers, not knowing they were cheering for us. I left my diddins in that convention hall, carrying with me a list of all our dids. We did start a podcast. We did keep it running through most of the year, and we did make 7 excellent, 7 good, and 7 passable episodes. We made it to the first big podcasting convention and made our presence known. We did it. On Monday, I took a ride up to Freeway Park and wandered back into the empty convention hall in the heart of Seattle to slow down and partake of the benefits wrought from the liberal laws of the great state of Washington. My weekend had revolved around this central point that had been teeming with life only hours before. PodCon, by word of the owners and organizers, was to be a 2-day celebration of the medium I've insinuated us into. To bring those who love podcasts together with those who make podcasts and just see what happens. I met so many eager and fantastic indie creators with excellent ideas and wonderful shows, and I can't wait to watch them grow and share the stage with them. The panelists were welcome teachers and presenters, and the information they could lay out was vast and invaluable, and I only wish I could have had more time to pull them aside and pick their brains one-on-one. Walking out of the empty convention center, I thought about how my mind from the beginning, my mind state from the beginning of the trip, how I had come all this way to park myself on this stretch of street and wrap myself in the lessons of those on stage and let it harden around me and break free. I left the building behind like the brittle carapace of a cicada shell hanging on a pine tree. I stumbled into the sun to dry my wings, a new creature. I spent my last few hours of Seattle time at the Pike's Place Public Market. The old world sensibilities of an open-air marketplace was the perfect environment to reflect on the weekend. The buskers singing their songs, the farmers hawking their produce, the cheesemakers churning cream into curd into cheese and making delicious macaroni. It's also calming and mesmerizing, the cream and the curd, and the workers in constant movement have to be in concert to make the soft, chewy dairy staple. Without all the pieces, without all the machinery, without the patience of time, you're left with a soggy, chunky, malformed mess. So I stood at the edge of the West, where my country spills into the Pacific, and did what I do best. Thinking about what I came here with and what I would have when I left. I thought about passing the owner in the hall and how I probably could have done better in that moment. And I pondered the words that he left me with. Because I have to find meaning in all small moments. I'm sneaky, even when I don't mean to be. But that's part of my gift. I find my way into spaces I don't belong and claim a stake. I place myself amongst my betters and force the world to accept and recognize this rogue for an achievement. I came to this port seeking an understanding of a professional skill. I return home to the concrete swamp with a map for our future and knowledge of myself. And for the first time in 29 years, I see the path opening before me and am itching to follow it to the next fork in the road. We have so much to do and so much to learn and so much to teach each other in these next coming year to get on to that main stage in the next 2. I'll see you in 2018.
Hey out there once again. It's your old pal Chris Myers from bonushours.com, and I just learned a great deal from Hank Green right here.
Hey, oh man, you were so good at that. That was sneaky.
Yeah.
We're about to get on an escalator together.
Thank you. Learned a shit ton about podcasting. I got a ton to tell you guys when I get back home. But right now, I gotta go find a place to sit for a second, have a quick cigarette, and think about what I just learned.